Welcome to The Hive, podcast episode 3, East Flagler Mosquito District. We're here with Director Mark Positano to learn all about what happens at the East Flagler Mosquito District and how they work to contain the mosquito population.
Most people do know this. So the fog truck is, drives down your road at night, sprays chemicals, makes a lot of noise. That noise is actually this blower motor that's providing a blast of air. So what the blast of air does is it pushes the particles of pesticide out really fast, and they basically vaporize. And that speed gives them that ability to vaporize. So there's two parts to the fog machine. One is the air blast powered by a gasoline engine, and then the other part is just a chemical injection pump that ties into the nozzle and then it blasts out. So these droplets are very small, like 20 microns. So when you get out of a hot shower and the steam's kind of floating around, but it's not quite settling down, those are the size droplets we're talking about. And so how that works is they float around about 300 feet swath width, and they come in contact with flying mosquitoes. If it lands on your vegetation or your car, it's not going to do any good because that chemical breaks down very quickly. It's not going to have any latent effect on that. So the 15 minutes it's floating around is when you have your effective control of mosquitoes. All of this is computer controlled, so GPS. So if the truck's driving 5 miles per hour or 20 miles per hour, it adjusts the chemical flow so that you're getting the same ounces per acre. So you're not over-treating or under-treating no matter how fast you're driving. Okay?
All right.
So this is a great tool. It's inexpensive compared to a $5 million helicopter, but it's limited to roads. So if you live out in the country or you live far away from where the roads are, it's not going to do any good. Dense network of roads like we have through most of Palm Coast, very good tool, very inexpensive. Not a good tool once you get beyond that. That's why we have the helicopter.
Okay.
I'm going to show you something else on the other end here. So we have more trucks than we have people. That's pretty common for mosquito control. So we only have 14 employees, but we have 22 trucks, I think, currently. So we can control the adult mosquitoes. That's more of a reactive thing. We have to wait for them to show up. We don't spray in any kind of a schedule. I'll talk more about that later. But we can also use something like this. This is a liquid larvicide unit. And to kind of save space for the trucks, we take these on and off. So this is not something we use a lot. So if we need that, we can put it into another truck, or we can move equipment around. This type of stuff here we manufacture here, and then we just have it powder coated elsewhere. So this truck is a truck. It can be a fog truck, or it can be a larvicide truck, or it can be a service truck. It can be whatever we need it to be, so we have less trucks than if we just had one of each. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And everything we do is kind of like off-road capable, because we're pretty much going where the mosquitoes are, not where people are.
That is very true. The mosquitoes are not always around all of the people.
No. Any questions so far?
Well, I do want to ask, because this is a question I get asked a lot from people that follow us and read the stuff that we put out is, obviously, you know that the climate today, there's a lot of, pesticide-free, chemical-free. Sure. Everybody is worried, concerned about health ramifications from things being sprayed or put on what they're using. So can you kind of maybe elaborate a little bit about what you use?
Go outside real quick. We're a little bit quieter. So we... I elaborated fully about how the fog truck works. So the helicopter one does adult deciding, it works the same way. Small droplets, they hang in the air for a little while, then they break down. There's no residual effect for any pollinators or beneficial insects. So what we primarily focus on is larviciding in the salt marsh. So we were created in 1952 to control mosquitoes in the salt marsh. So there's 48 species of mosquitoes just in Flagler County. There's about 80 in the state, thousands in the world.
200 in the U.S. and 3,600 worldwide.
So a lot of different species. They all are a little bit different, just like a bird's. One species of bird's a little different than the other. I always use that as an analogy. So that product that we're putting in the salt marsh is a granule. We apply it before the water comes or before the mosquitoes can start living in the water. And it's called natural lard. Okay, so it's made from a bacterially derived product. It has an organic label on it. Okay, so that's pretty safe to use. The actual ingredient is spinosyn, which you can also feed to your dog or your cat to kill fleas and ticks. They can actually ingest it.
Okay.
So really safe stuff, okay? As I mentioned, the stuff we use in the truck is called permethrin. Permethrin is what, when I was a kid, you put in your hair to kill lice. Also extremely safe. It also breaks down very quickly. What we're more concerned about with pesticide is basically resistance. So there's only 2 classes of chemicals we use to spray for adults. If you lose control with one, then the other one's going to go pretty quickly. So resistance is the bigger threat for us. So everything we use, we want it to break down very quickly, which is very different than every other type of chemical you're using for pest control. So if you're in agriculture or commercial, you want a long residual, right? You don't want to have to keep spraying your crops or your commercial setting every other day to keep your pests under control, whereas we do not want pesticides sitting around, because that just gives the insects the time to build up resistance to it. So spray it, kill it, done.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of
Got a good
sense.
chart for you too.
Okay.
If you want it.
Yeah.
All right. So I will start with the far end here. So you've got drums. The drums are for the helicopter. The totes for the trucks. Different chemicals. This is called cocoa bear. This is derived from coconut oil. It's called a pupicide. So you spray that on the water. Where you already got mosquitoes, you can't pre-treat with this. This is again a reactive type of thing. But it basically smothers the mosquito larvae. So it's coconut oil, again, very safe.
Okay.
And where we're putting something like that, there's not fish. Okay. So mosquitoes they've evolved to take advantage of spots that don't have predators in them, so that they don't have to eat. Right. So when we put something like that, and then there's no other aquatic vegetation, there's no other aquatic organism that are macrophytes, microorganisms that are not going to be affected by that.
Okay.
So we put the granulars out by helicopter, by drone, by backpack, by hand spreader. Here's the backpacks. Usually there's a hand spreader. There they are up there, laying around. That's where we're spending most of our physical effort, is in the salt marsh. And then we're reactive when we do the adult deciding. And adult deciding is mostly done on the west side because there's so much swamp, we can't possibly control the large side. We need millions of dollars just to do that.
Yeah.
Never mind everything else. Okay. The other thing I usually point out when we're in here is just that this is an extremely safe facility, so that when the trucks roll in here, change chemical out, this gantry rolls over. So Nicole's got it right there. That pulls it out of the truck, goes onto the scale, gets weighed, filled back up, put back on the truck. If I need to fly one of these drums over, same crane, it has a connector that goes on the drums. I fly it onto the lift, where I take it out to the helicopter. So you're never doing this. That level of thought has been put into just about everything we do for the district, so that people don't get hurt, so the public is safe, our equipment is good. All of those things are pre-planned out, so this is a very structured, logical organization that we do.
Okay. One of the other questions that I wanted to ask about, because it's one that I get asked a lot, and I stumble over the words on how to answer this to some people. A lot of new residents don't understand exactly where you guys fall in like with the city of Palm Coast or Flagler County. They assume you're part of.
Let's we'll put a tab on that. We'll come back to that.
All right.
But yeah, we can talk about that. All right. So carbon dioxide. Lots of carbon dioxide tanks. So what we're using that for is to trap mosquitoes. Mosquitoes like 2 things besides our blood, which is what they're using those 2 things for. They like light, because they know we use light sources, so they come to us to feed on us. They also like CO2 because we exhale CO2. That means that we're alive if we're exhaling CO2, right? Okay. So CO2 canister gets in here. Okay, lock it down. It actually has a regulator on it, so that it meters out the CO2 gas. Battery sits in this compartment here, and then the CO2 feeds into a tube right here, and the battery powers a fan and light. So what happens is the mosquito sees the light, flies towards the trap, gets a whiff of the CO2, now it's a little more interested, comes to where it's being emanated, and then the fan sucks it into a collecting cup that's hanging here. So we bring this cup back to the lab, we freeze it, and then we ID it to species and count it. And we generate a report, and that's how we have the justification to apply pesticides. It's not on every other Wednesday, it's only when we have the counts to do it. Okay, so not only are you not really getting exposed to the pesticide, but you're only getting the pesticide applied when we have justification, because there are mosquitoes present.
Okay.
So right now we're not spraying. A couple weeks of rain, we'll be spraying. Make sense?
Yeah.
This is a very important part of the shop, but it's not the most important part of the shop. So a lot of things we do for mosquito control, we have to borrow from agriculture, or we have to just build it from scratch. That's why I pointed out those fog trucks with the equipment on the back of it. There's only a few things we can buy directly from mosquito control. So we can buy that fog equipment, we can buy all of that put together from several different suppliers, and there's some tanks that we have for the helicopter that are specifically made for helicopter use, but they're for agriculture essentially, or even fire suppression, like the tank can be used for fire suppression. So a lot of that stuff has to be kind of figured out. How is it going to work for mosquito control? So we have just a variety of equipment here basically to weld, cut, assemble things, and I'll show you a little bit more stuff that we have as we go through. We have a 3D printer, that sort of stuff. It kind of has to be created. So the mosquito control community is kind of a creative organization that we're a part of. So we have to create equipment, we have to create processes, like that CDC light trap that's specifically built for mosquitoes. That's not really going to be good for catching other types of insects. All those types of things are specific to mosquito control. And I'll give you more of an example. So in here is our battery room, okay? The batteries needed for that trap. Each location where we have traps, and we trap every day, so we get 4 days worth of data. So 5 days worth of trapping, you get 4 days worth of data. Has its own battery and has its own charger. If something happens to the battery, then the trap won't work, which means we don't have data, which means we can't spray. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So this has to all be thought out pretty well. If anything happens, then we can eliminate that battery from rotation immediately and put it out a fresh battery.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Very efficient.
All right, so traps before we work on drones. We're spraying the granules. Remember I said drones, granular, helicopter, backpack. All right, helicopter. So this is a new Airbus H-125. It's about a year old now. We just got it. This is replaced our old helicopter, which was a 2005 Jet Ranger. We've been in an aerial program since 1990. Air is the way to do mosquito control. If you don't have a helicopter, you're working at a severe disadvantage because you can't really reach the areas where the mosquitoes are coming from. You can walk out there, but you're not going to be able to bring enough pesticide with you. So these are the tanks. And just like the trucks, it's all computer controlled, obviously. So the helicopter has a separate spray computer. This green box here is the spray computer. So the pilot controls all that through his cyclic right here. You okay? So again, GPS, ounces per acre, or in this case, it'd be pounds per acre with the granulars. Okay. So the helicopter's 3 missions. It does surveillance, which is what you're going to use this morning. And then we attach equipment, those tanks. Also, that tank there is a liquid adulticide tank. And then when we do that, it has those booms that comes out. So it's going to spray for the adult mosquitoes that are flying around. So multi-mission helicopter. Some of the bigger programs have multiple helicopters. We're just one program with this. This is actually quite a bit bigger than the old helicopter we have. So as we've expanded most recently, we needed more capability. The other helicopter was pushing 20 years, so we upgraded to this.
Okay.
Various equipment that we use for off-roading. Sometimes it's just to see what's going on. We do have, morning TC.
Morning.
We have like this ATV here has a bush hog attachment on it. So if we need to clear a trail for the ATV, we just throw that on there and pretty much get anywhere we need to.
Okay.
This is a little bit different. This right here. This is something we're trying out. So garlic, bad for vampires and mosquitoes. Okay. So
Very nice.
we actually.
Olive Garden breadsticks.
It does smell like breadsticks.
We have enzymes that break down garlic so we can eat garlic. Mosquitoes do not. Your dog doesn't have those enzymes either, so don't feed garlic and onions to your dog. So there's probably some kind of truth. If you did have vampires, you could use garlic and they would stay away. So what this is, it's not the fog truck. These are bigger droplets. What we can do is we can coat the vegetation. Here we do want the product to stay, okay? So we mix, and we can buy this product with garlic. I call it garlic juice, but it's basically garlic juice concentrated with some other kind of sugars in it that the mosquitoes will like to eat. And they will actually drink the solution off of the leaves because they're attracted to the sugars, but then they get the garlic in them and they die. Okay, so this is perfectly safe to use around people because we don't find garlic toxic, but we don't need justification for mosquitoes either, right? Remember I told you we have to count and all that other stuff. Mm-hmm. Same thing we do larvicide. We have to prove that they're there. This we can just coat the vegetation. and we put these signs up so people know what that smell is, because it is pretty strong at times, especially when you first put it out. And then you just use a simple equipment.
Okay. So if there were residents that maybe had larger lots in the city,
We're only using in recreation areas.
but is that, and I know that I get this question a lot from people that I know. They go, well, what can I use for mosquitoes in my own yard?
I would tell.
Would it be worth it for them to try something like that?
I would tell people that you probably don't need to do anything to your own yard other than clean it up. Containers. When we spray the whole area. So when we drive down the road, we're spraying your yard, we're spraying your neighbor's yard. But we're watching the mosquito population. What we're not watching is your personal population of container mosquitoes you have in your yard. But if you eliminate the containers, you won't have those mosquitoes.
Okay.
Okay. So what should you do in your property? Clean it up. That's really all there is to it. And we facilitate that with tire day. You can bring us your bromeliads. Please don't have bromeliads in your yard because they breed mosquitoes like crazy. That's one or two of the 48 species that we have. So there's two that are like that container mosquitoes, Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus. We primarily have albopictus because we have more trees here. You go up to St. Augustine and you're more likely to have Aedes aegypti. Go to South Florida, you're more likely to have Aedes aegypti.
Okay.
So kind of like different bird species. So in here, it says laboratory on the door, but it's really not that. The only thing laboratory that we really do is resistance testing. So we basically collect mosquitoes in the field as larvae. We rear them in these rearing chambers till they're adults, and then we put them in a jar with pesticide to make sure they die. Okay? Because remember, I said our biggest concern is resistance. So that's what the fume hood is for. That's what the bottles and all are for. That's what these things are here for. Let's just test that. The rest of this is really kind of more of a maker space. And I'll get into more in a little bit. We're constantly finding ways to monitor the weather, to monitor flooding. There's kind of a pressing time limit on us. So if it rains and the mosquitoes start to hatch in the soil or in flooded areas, it's 7 days before they go from egg to adult. So if we want to apply and we don't do pre-treatment, we only have so much time to do that. When we gauge when's the best time to apply that pre-treatment, because it's $150,000 every time we go to do pre-treat in the salt marsh, we want to get the best timing for that. So what we do is we monitor constantly what's happening in the salt marsh through telemetry, through people going out there, visual surveillance, and through helicopter surveillance that you're doing today. 3D printing. So we do kind of a variety of things with 3D printing. You can see this is the CDC light trap that I showed you outside. Basically what it is a serving tray, hobby fan, hobby light, and then this part now is 3D printed as well as the housing for the fan. So it's actually an upgrade because you can easily take these things apart versus the old metal stuff. You gotta get a screwdriver and all that kind of stuff. It takes a little more time. This just kind of pops in place and it just kind of holds it in place.
Okay.
CO2 regulator for the trap. Some parts for the drone that we're working on. Solar panels. This will make more sense here in a minute. Just basically technology stuff that we're using to be more efficient, more effective.
All right.
All right, so technology. Everything we do is on the phone. Okay, so the guys go out with the phone and they keep all these maps that I'm going to show you here on the phone. So this is the first map of the day. So at 6 a.m. our guys come in and they will go out and do landing area counts and they will check rain gauges and they'll collect those traps so we know what's going on in the field. So this is what this looks like. So as our 5 or 6 folks go out and look around, they're going to do landing area counts, they're going to check rain gauges. We also have on this what we call tips. So if you say, hey, I've got mosquitoes bugging me, this is what it looks like on the map. So you can either put them in directly from our website or you can call us and we'll put them on ourselves. But this guy here is basically, he lives on this drive. Many large mosquitoes in and around the house, in our community. So what this is probably, as I zoom in, you can see there's all these little water bodies around here. It's probably aquatic midges, not mosquitoes. So they look exactly like a mosquito. They're a small fly, but they do not have the proboscis, the long needle-looking thing, part of their mouth part, to draw blood. They don't eat at all as adults. They're aquatic primarily, and then they only come off the water to reproduce. It's really annoying because they land all over your house and car, but they're not a mosquito. We don't spray for them. Okay. All right, so that's the first map of the day. Then once the guys get back around 8 a.m., now they're switching gears to surveillance. So now they're going to go out into the salt marsh. They're going to go into other areas that breed mosquitoes. And that is this map. little busier. So I'll zoom into Flagler Beach. There's a lot going on Flagler Beach. So here, this is an old runway from World War II when they were doing training. And now it floods out and breeds mosquitoes. So this larger orange polygon, we treat by air, and then these smaller yellow polygons are the ones we check on the ground to see what the status is. Okay. So this is camera site 8, so when I pull up the cameras, you'll see exactly what this looks like. But we do this throughout the district. Okay. Right now it's extremely dry, so where these red diamonds are, it's showing that these were, when they were checked last week, they were dry. Okay. So when something is dry and stays dry, it's fine. Mosquito eggs aren't going to hatch without water. If it's dry and then gets wet, now we have a problem because the mosquitoes' eggs in there are going to hatch. Make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, so let me show you some cameras. One weird little logo. Okay, so this is what they are. They're just you can buy these off of Amazon. Cellular enabled, pan tilt zoom. This moves around so you can see what's going on. Solar powered, and then it just has a little cell chip in it so you can pull it up over the cell network. In fact, I'm gonna go if I can find site 8.
On the top. Right. Stop. Go back. Morning.
Not on a Monday.
Oh, it's not the right one.
Well, you got that stuff on the paper there?
Okay. So runway, Flagler Beach, you're looking at it.
Okay.
Okay. So when it does take on water, all of this will be underwater. It's pretty obvious. The other thing that we're doing is this is a weather station. It's $300, Amazon. It's called the Tempest. These are great. Rain, wind direction, humidity, all that kind of stuff. Solar intensity. But they're not cellular enabled. So what we were working on is there is basically a way to tie them into a hotspot. So use a bigger solar panel, tie the base station into that hotspot. Now basically it is you can do it through cellular. So this whole panel thing right here, we welded that in the shop, put the post in there, tied all this together. So that's all us. The other thing over here, if I can get to zoom over here. Still waking up, I guess.
It is Monday morning.
Oh, it's moving a little bit. If I push it too many times, it was like, yeah. Okay. No, go back. All right. So this is a soil moisture probe. So we borrowed that from agriculture. There's this thing called precision agriculture where the farmer's monitoring how moist the soil is depending on how much irrigation they're going to apply. So same thing in mosquito control. We want to see how wet that soil is to determine when it's going to flood out again or when it's going to dry down again. So that is this. Site 8. Okay. So each probe goes in the ground. Okay. And it has a sensor at 4, 8, and 12 inches. Tells you what the relative moisture content is. So we basically just take that, put it, so the 4-inch one's at the ground level. So when the ground level is wet, which is when mosquitoes would breed, you're getting a sensor right there. So this is basically saying at that 4-inch what that is, and then further into the ground it's a little wetter, obviously. Okay. This one will also do, you can tie into it for rain. I decided to try a different one here. So it'll have the rain on there as well. Temperature, salinity, that sort of stuff. I guess it hasn't rained, that's why there's not, that's why it's not showing.
Well, it shows there's a little tiny blue thing there.
It's a little bit of rain, but that's about it. So the other thing this company makes is a tide gauge. So tide's important because these sites in the salt marsh will flood either from rain or from the tide. So it's not your intertidal area that gets wet every day. It's when you have your higher tides. They kind of push up, and then they flood out the high salt marsh. So that's where the mosquitoes lay their eggs, that intermittent flooded area. If it flooded all the time, there would be fish there, and they would just eat the mosquito larvae. It's not going to work for the mosquitoes. So that's how we have that set up. So we can see, this is a different one. It's got a radar. This one's the old traditional pressure sensor type thing, but they're pretty much telling you the same thing. So
Okay.
rain, tide, kind of important. We kind of monitor what's happening with the climate predictions so that we know is it going to be dry, is it going to be wet, so we can kind of gauge our operations to that. We're usually not too surprised when the mosquitoes show up because we're watching all of that stuff happen in real time. Over here, I think this is the last thing I'll show you, is what your reports look like. So 500, 400, 400, less than 400, these are very small amounts of mosquitoes district-wide for being into May now. And basically what's happening is there's just not a lot of mosquitoes being produced because there's no moisture. A lot of sites that are normally wet are drying down. There's certainly no additional flooding happening.
Okay.
So what it looks like is when we're not spraying, is it's going to look like this. There's no zones highlighted. Versus after the hurricane, all of this was done by aerial and the yellow blocks were done by trucks. So if there's nothing to spray, we're not spraying. If there is a lot to spray, then we are spraying a lot.
Okay. So there really is a lot of science involved in deciding when, how,
Yes.
and all of that.
By law, yeah. So state and federal law require that for us to apply pesticides, we have to have some sort of justification. So most of what we're doing is we're watching the weather, we're watching the mosquito population, whether it's still in the water or when they're flying around. Then we take action. Then the actual control part takes place. Okay, so boardroom, training room, conference room. This is where our board meets. So we were, again, formed 1952 to kill salt marsh mosquitoes. Okay, at the time the state was trying to develop this area of the state. Remember, if you remember your Florida history, people thought Florida would never be developed because it's a wasteland of mosquitoes.
Bogs and quagmires.
Bogs and quagmires, to use the terminology of the time. So the state wants to develop the area, especially after World War II. A lot of these districts were put together in the late 40s and early 50s to combat salt marsh mosquitoes. Salt marsh mosquitoes are particularly bad because they can fly 20 miles in a single night. They're extremely aggressive, and they come off in huge numbers. So when you fly around the salt marsh today, think about what it was like to live here in the 50s with all that salt marsh. That's now, a lot of it's been developed into homes and
I probably
condominiums
would
and
have
golf
been
courses.
eaten alive.
There's a map right there from 1955 if you want to kind of get a gist of what wasn't here.
You really couldn't live here year-round unless you were really tough. So people would come in the wintertime, then they'd go right back to where they were because the mosquitoes were intolerable. And then you got into that, the other mosquitoes that were spreading diseases, yellow fever, dengue, malaria, all of those things were here in Florida. You really couldn't live here, or even if you did try to live here, you're going to probably die from diseases. Not just mosquito-borne, but other ones as well. So part of that is we are an independent special taxing district. So that means that we're not the city, we're not the county, but we are part of state government. So we have 3 independently elected commissioners. Those folks live in the district. They run for office just like a city commissioner or county commissioner, and they serve on a board. So every 4 years, along with the presidential election, you vote for all 3 of those guys. It's not broken up. You only get to vote for one. It's all 3 of them.
Okay.
Okay? And we have a board meeting once a month, and we do meeting minutes, and we do bullet budgets and all that kind of stuff.
All right.
Mhm.
And now, one of my last questions is, are tours like this where you talk about things, you show people all of this stuff, can any resident reach out to you and set something like that up if they're
think
truly
we're-
trying to understand what you
I think we're
do?
going to have an open house.
So we're gonna have an open house, but because the tour is so in depth, instead of just opening the floodgates, right, and letting you come whenever you want, you're gonna be able to reserve your time slot.
Okay.
So we can do it in groups, and everybody can get the same kind of tour that you did.
Trust me, I've given it 100 times, I'll give it 100 more times.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's going to be set up similar to like a citizens academy that some of the other
Correct.
municipalities do.
Correct.
Okay.
And then I know other entities, right? So the Chamber of Commerce, they're coming with their Citizens Academy. I'll be at the Flagler Citizens Academy, and so the Flagler Citizens Academy is at the EOC. So there's a tour encompassing with that, but the Chamber is actually bringing their academy to us.
Okay. And then you'll be setting up an open house thing, event.
Yeah, it'll be in June.
In June.
During National Mosquito Week.
Okay. I did not know we had a National Mosquito Week.
We had a Florida Mosquito Week too. It was in April.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we're not just here by ourselves. There's a Florida Mosquito Control Association. There's an American Mosquito Control Association. So we're all part of a bigger group that does this, but it is kind of a niche industry for mosquito control.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to
Yeah,
do
no
that
problem,
and
Kristen.
letting me get this on audio for our podcast.